If you walk through the French Quarter late enough at night, eventually someone will point toward the old Ursuline Convent. And almost every version of the story begins the same way. Look at the attic windows. The building itself does not look dramatic. No broken glass, no collapsing walls, no obvious signs of haunting. Just pale shutters sitting above one of the oldest streets in New Orleans. Quiet, still, watching. But people in the city keep looking up at those windows anyway. Because, according to one of New Orleans' oldest legends, something arrived there in the early 1700s and never truly left. At the time, New Orleans was barely surviving. The colony was overcrowded, violent, and constantly sick. Most of the population was male. Sailors, dock workers, soldiers, and criminals. Yellow fever spread through the city endlessly. People disappeared into graves almost as quickly as a day arrived. The heat was suffocating. The streets smelled of mud, sweat, sickness, and death. France feared the colony would collapse. So ships began crossing the Atlantic, carrying young women meant to marry the settlers in Louisiana and build permanent families in the New World. The women were real. Historical records confirm they arrived throughout the 1720s and 1730s. Some came from convents, some from orphanages, some from poverty. And they arrived carrying small wooden trunks known as cassettes. But in New Orleans, words have a habit of changing shape. Cassette became casket, and the city never forgot it. People noticed the girls immediately. How could they not? Most colonists looked exhausted from disease and heat. But according to those stories whispered through New Orleans for generations, the girls looked different. Too pale. Not simply fair-skinned. Pale in a way people remembered. Some claimed the women barely seemed affected by Louisiana climate. Others said they moved through the convent silently enough to frighten people. And eventually, the conversation started. Quiet conversations at first, the kind people only had indoors. Late at night, away from priests. Some wondered why the girls spent so much time inside the Ursuline Convent after arriving. Others whispered about local men becoming strangely obsessed with them. One dock worker supposedly swore he saw one of the girls walking alone through the convent courtyard, long after midnight without carrying a lantern. Another story claimed a colonist became violently ill after repeatedly visiting one of them. And then came the rumors about the trunks, the caskets. People in the city became fixated on them. Some believed the girls protected the trunks obsessively during the voyage from France. Others claimed the boxes felt unusually heavy. And according to the version of the story that survived the longest, church officials eventually demanded the trunks be opened after the girls arrived in Louisiana. What they expected to find, nobody knows. But the story says when the caskets were finally opened, they were empty. No clothing, no jewelry, no personal belongings. Nothing. As if whatever crossed the Atlantic inside them had already stepped out. After that, the rumors changed completely. People stopped asking what was inside the boxes. and started asking what had escaped from them. That was when the word vampire began attaching itself to the girls. Not publicly, never openly. New Orleans in the 1700s was deeply Catholic. Nobody would casually accuse women protected by the church of being something inhuman. But the whispers spread anyway. Some claimed the girls avoided daylight whenever possible. Others swore they looked exactly the same, months after arriving, while everyone around them grew thinner and sicker from disease outbreaks. A few stories even claimed the Ursuline nuns themselves became frightened. That something happened inside the convent badly enough for the attic windows to be sealed shut completely and permanently. And those windows became the center of everything. For generations, locals claimed the attic shutters had been nailed closed using nails blessed by the Pope himself. Not locked, not painted shut, blessed shut. That detail terrified people. Because blessings are protections, and protections imply danger. Some believed the church trapped the girls upstairs. Others believed the attic held something worse than the girls themselves. People walking through the French Quarter late at night claimed they sometimes saw movement behind the shutters. Some swore pale faces appeared briefly at the windows before vanishing again. Others insisted they heard footsteps, despite the attic supposedly being sealed for decades. And maybe none of it was true. But in New Orleans, stories survived because enough people became afraid in the exact same way. Even now, nearly 300 years later, people still stop outside the Ursuline Convent after dark and stare up at the attic windows, waiting for something to move behind the shutters. And the strangest part is, people still claim they see things there. Maybe it's imagination. Maybe it's the atmosphere. Maybe New Orleans simply knows how to make people afraid. Or maybe a ship crossed the Atlantic carrying something far worse than frightened young women. And whatever stepped out of those caskets never left the city at all.